everybody and welcome to this week's video. Now this week I want to tell you a little bit of a story. Sorry about the bumpy road, by the way. England has just come out of lockdown, so what that meant for me is that the message that we've had is stay at home, which has now changed to stay local, which means you are sort of allowed to travel a little bit, which after the time we've had, you know, especially trying to shoot videos all from more or less walking distance from home, I thought, well, that's great. I can get out and go to one or two of the reserves that I know a little bit further out that I've not been to for such a long time. And so I was travelling out. I just got a mile out of the village yesterday and looked to my right, and the reserve that I was going to suddenly disappeared from my mind. The times I've been up here and not seen anything like this, well, I never have, so I had to stop the car and I had to investigate, and that's where we get this week's video from. That's where we get this week's video from. So I'm not actually travelling very far at all. I'm just travelling up to the next village actually, and when I've parked up I'll tell you what I'm here to try and photograph. So what am I here to photograph? Well, as I was driving from our village across to the next village, I happened to, as I always do, I'm always looking for wildlife when I'm driving, probably more than I should actually. I happened to glance to my right, and across the top of the woodland I saw this big bird, and I thought, oh, buzzard. But then I caught sight of its tail and realised it was a red kite, and closely followed by another red kite. So I immediately stopped and turned the car around. For those of you that don't know, I live in Nottinghamshire, and red kites are quite rare. There was a release, I think, up near Harewood House near Leeds a long time ago, and there was a release down south of Grantham, I think somewhere like Rockingham Forest. And sort of it's quite a joke actually, because when we're on the A1 either going north or south, if we go south you can look up into the sky and see buzzards until you get to just past Grantham going south, and then you start to occasionally see a red kite. And if we go up north, which I often do, as you get to Ferrybridge Power Station, which is just south of Leeds, then you start to see, just north of Doncaster as well, then you start to see red kites up there coming across the main road. And Nottinghamshire just they just don't seem to have come here at all. So to see two, anyway, when I'd parked the car up, I managed to get hold of one of the landowners and said, oh, would you say I was crazy if I said I'd just seen two red kites? And he said, no, we've got four up here at the minute. And as it's the end of March and beginning of April, and that's when they start to nest, four does strike me as there's a good chance that they may breed up here. So hence why I'm up here today. So I'm going to try and get into a position. Now today it's going to be more of an observation situation this week, because I'm not sure of their behaviour and where they are and where they're moving to, and sort of their daily movements. It's quite windy as well today, so I'm not sure whether I'll get any images or not. But really it's just such a brilliant to actually have them here and be able to do some potential photography with red kites in Nottinghamshire. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll catch up with you when I've got set up. Right, I hope this audio is okay. I've switched from the shotgun mic to a lapel mic because I'm actually out in the wind a little bit here. Yesterday when I came up, I set up across there on the other side of this field, but what I noticed were the kites were coming from over the woodland there and coming over here, but the winds coming from the southwest, so they were going into the southwest basically. And the wind, although it's dropped a little bit today, I think it's probably about 22-24 miles an hour, and it was up to like 35-40 yesterday. I'm hoping again that because I'm over this side, plus I've got the sun behind me as well, rather than getting a sort of silhouette shot, hopefully they'll come across here again today and I can get some decent images from this side. But you know, it's all trial and error at this point. It's nice just to see them. I think I've probably just seen one over the trees, and it's always a bit of a guessing game, this, because you come and set up somewhere, you use all the intelligence that you've gathered or you think you've gathered, and you come and set up, and then often you'll see them in somewhere completely different or where you were the day before, which can be quite frustrating. So it really is a bit of trial and error. It's quite early at the minute, so it's 1:30. Probably not expecting anything until after 2 towards 3 o'clock when stuff will start moving around again, but we'll see. But yeah, it's just a lovely day, and hopefully we're going to get some kite action. I was actually thinking about getting some scrim netting, or bringing the scrim netting out with me. I bought it in the car, you probably saw it at the beginning there, but to be honest, I don't think I need it. So all I've done is set myself up with my back against this tree here, on the edge of the field, and it's just really a waiting game. I don't think kites are particularly bothered about people in you know, that respect. They'll sort of fly quite close anyway. So, and what, you know, if you're using a hide or anything, what I find, especially if you're in a situation like now where I'm not 100% sure whether anything is going to happen or where it's going to happen from, if you put yourself in a hide, you can only see that front vision of what you're looking at. All your periphery and the stuff around you that's going on, you'll miss, which, you know, in this situation where I don't know where it's going to come from, when it's going to happen, it's much better that I'm set up here quite open so that I can react to anything that I see happening in any direction, if you like. So anyway, I'm going to sit here probably for 2, 3, 4 hours probably, and have a nice afternoon and wait to see if these kites turn up. Yeah, all I'm really doing at the minute is just leaning back here and watching that far top of the woodland there. That's where I've seen the kites before over the last couple of days, and I'm just hoping that they come up out of there, drift across this way, this open field in front of me, heading into this wind with the sun behind me, and it should work perfectly. But of course, we're always just waiting for that wildlife to turn up, and I've got 1 or 2 pheasants I've taken some pictures of in front of me coming out of the hedge and stuff, because this is a shooting estate, so there's quite a few of those, and there's some partridges that I'm hoping will get a little bit closer to enable me to get a shot. So as I say, I'm just going to sit here quietly, and if nothing else, it's a nice pleasant way to spend a couple of hours in the afternoon. So I'll get back to you later. And you might be thinking, if you live in a part of the country where sort of red kites are commonplace, you might be thinking, well, you know, it's quite a lot of fuss over a red kite, but as I said earlier, you know, we don't tend to get them in Nottinghamshire at all, and I've never actually photographed them. I've never travelled to somewhere like Gengrim Farm or somewhere like that where they feed them, and you know, it's quite easy to go on a sort of platform and wait till a certain time of the day when they feed the kites, and 300 come in, and you can take photos to your heart's content. So this is like wild, you know. And to be able to photograph them in Nottinghamshire would be absolutely brilliant. So any sort of shot, you know, fingers crossed, I would be quite happy with. But yeah, it's a little bit hit and hope today. As I've said in my sort of beginners videos that I've done for people, that none of this time is wasted, because I'm just seeing what's around. I'm seeing what the behaviour of the kites is. If the kites don't actually come here, you know, I know what the wind conditions were like yesterday, so I know what they're like today. So I'm just surmising that because the wind conditions are virtually the same today, just not quite as windy, that maybe they'll have the same behaviour today. But if they don't, you know, I'll have learnt something if they're somewhere else, and I'll have to try and work out what that pattern is, you know, to try and get some shots. But that's all the fun, really, of wildlife photography. You know, it's a case of pitching your wits against whatever animal or bird that you're trying to get a picture of, and you know, making sure that you do everything you can to make that happen. So yeah, it's a little bit of hit and hope today, but I'm more on the hope side at the minute. I'm just hoping that as the afternoon wears on, these kites will come out and start to perform in front of me, and hopefully this wind will drop just a little bit. Right, you probably wouldn't believe it, but there's a couple of, I'm not sure whether they're buzzards actually, just the other side of this road. bit further that way today than they were yesterday, so I'm not sure whether they're red kites or not. I've just seen them sort of drifting behind this tree in the distance, so one of them was definitely a buzzard, but I'm not quite sure about the other one, so I'm hoping that they are going to drift back across this side. I don't really want to move, because you start chasing shadows a little bit, because if I move somewhere else then they'll move over here. So I think sometimes you've just got to stick with your convictions that you've made the right decision and just stick with it and see what happens. But I don't know, I'm really not sure now, so we'll see. It's early yet, it's only 10 to 2, so there's plenty of time yet, and we'll see what happens. I have got 2 kites off to the side of it at the minute, but they're really, really high. Definitely kites though. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it looks like, oh, what's that? That's 3 kites. That might actually be all 4 kites up in above this wood, so if only they'll come across here. They're just hanging in the wind. Well, that's an encouraging start. There's actually all 4 of them up in the air and doing that, diving each other actually, so it is the start of the breeding season, so I'm wondering whether they're pairing up, which is brilliant news. I just need them to come slightly further this way now. They're above the top of those woods that I showed you in the distance. I've definitely seen 4. I'm just making sure we haven't got more than 4. Right, back to it. It's quite interesting that to what just happened there. All 4 red kites were up displaying amongst each other, and then across the top of the woods at a lower level there was a couple of buzzards turned up, and I think one was a smaller male and one was a bigger female, and the red kites immediately sort of dropped down onto these buzzards, but actually it looks like it's the buzzards that's cleared the red kites off, which I quite like actually, because I'm a real big buzzard fan. But yeah, it seems like the red kites gave way for the buzzards in the end, but it was a lovely sort of aerial display over the wood. Well, just a pity it wasn't a little bit closer. I got some shots of the buzzards as they drifted back over here when the altercation had finished, but yeah, it was just interesting to watch. I think the red kites are going to come back up, so I'm just hoping that they drift this way now and we can get some pictures. Another quick tip for anybody doing wildlife photography and starting out in this sort of thing for the first time is always keep a check on your battery. At the minute I'm down to about 30%, so when I get down to sort of 10% I'll switch the battery over. Never let it get down really low, because if you get into a situation where you've got things happening in front of you, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to get a battery out and put a battery into the camera. Far better to just leave that 10% of the power in that battery and put a new one in that's at 100%. Then if the action kicks off, you're ready to go and get stuck in with it all, rather than fiddling about and missing it while you're trying to put a new battery in your camera. So I'm keeping an eye on this at the minute. It's a little bit quiet at the minute. The red kites, they appeared again. I don't know where they've drifted to now. They were mixed up with a couple of buzzards as well, so we'll see. I'm sure they'll be out again in a while. Just got to keep your wits about you and see which direction they're going to come from, really. So I'll catch you later. Right, I think that's me done for today. Hope the audio's come out okay. I think there is some sort of pattern developing. I was up here yesterday and again up here today. Yesterday I was on the opposite side, and what I saw was the red kites came over this section of field here and then drifted off to the south. Well, I've actually nearly missed it actually, because they came round the back of me to the east of me a little bit. I was just moving around, just getting ready to pack up, and they drifted again that way, again to the south. I've got a couple of shots as they came through. Again, nothing spectacular, but what I'm going to do, I'll probably be up here again tomorrow. I think the weather's due to be okay, but it'll be later on because I'm at work, so I might try a sort of slightly later session. I don't know where the other two red kites are at all. There's another woodland a bit further across that way, and it seemed as if those two were drifting across to there. So anyway, a lot of work to be done, obviously, but I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. I will see you next week for another one. If you have enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. It does help to grow the channel, and obviously, again, if you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'll see you next week for another video. Cheers, bye.